Hello and welcome to the Tuesday, July 29th, 2025 edition of the SANS Internet Storm Center's Stormcast. My name is Johannes, already recording today from Jacksonville, Florida. And this episode is brought to you by the SANS.edu Graduate Certificate Program in Incident Response. Yesterday, I think I mentioned these parasitic attacks against the backdoors that were left behind by SharePoint exploits. Wrote up some of this a little bit today. And also here a quick graph is what I published there showing how these particular attacks evolved. They started pretty much on the 20th. That's sort of when this entire SharePoint issue sort of hit the news big time, then rose quickly since then, somewhat steady. Maybe a little drop here the last couple of days. But many of these attacks are also coming from researchers that are just trying to figure out how many systems are affected from these attacks. Now, the other thing I published as part of this is the different URLs that are being hit here. Interestingly, there's one URL that was hit on the 13th and also the 16th one really was just an exploit. So on the 13th, the URL teamslogon.aspx was hit. Not sure, I haven't had a chance to look at this on a real SharePoint server to see if that URL actually exists. I don't think it does exist. So this would be possibly an early left behind sort of backdoor that someone was looking for here before the attack sort of really blew up. Then on the 16th, we see the toolpane.aspx. And again, that's from our honeypots. So that's when we saw the initial attacks in our honeypots. And then, of course, it continues on the 19th with sp install 0. They're varying also a little bit than the number here, like sp install 8 was one, or sp install X that we see, and a couple others like xx.aspx is sort of interesting. Sys layouts, so maybe something that attempts to fit a little bit better into the overall naming scheme and such to make it less suspicious as a file. Anyway, these attacks are still ongoing. Just as a reminder, if you do see an unpatched SharePoint server, it has been compromised at this point, in particular if it's being exposed. Haven't seen any exploits yet that remove some of these backdoors, but that would be sort of a logic next step for an attacker to basically remove evidence also after they attack a particular system. So really careful, look over your logs, make sure that you're not missing anything. Rebuild, patch the server, and definitely rotate the machine keys. And the Zero-Day Initiative released a blog post with details regarding two related vulnerabilities that were patched by Cisco in June 25th. And then a couple weeks later, a second patch was released around July 17th. These vulnerabilities are now actively exploited according to Cisco. They affect the Identity Services Engine. I think I mentioned them a couple weeks ago when the patch was released for these particular vulnerabilities, and they may get an attacker from being unauthenticated all the way to executing arbitrary code. And this particular blog post goes through all the steps necessary with sample code. So everything that you need to exploit the vulnerability is here and is public. Insofar, it's just fair to assume, as Cisco did in the update to their advisory, that these vulnerabilities are now actively being exploited, and you better make sure that your systems are being patched. And ASUS released an update for its MyASUS tool. And now this is often pre-installed software, or software that users then later install in order to better be able to control their PCs. The problem with these tools is often that they have far-reaching access to the hardware and software running on the system. In this particular case, one of the vulnerabilities does consist of hard-coded credentials that may give an attacker access to some of that functionality. The release here from ASUS is fairly vague on what it exactly involves and how it could be exploited. but there are often HTTP APIs and such involved. So definitely something that you should be paying attention to and hopefully patch it rather sooner than later. The problem, on the other hand, is that these kind of tools are often on home user PCs, not so much on like organization and enterprise PCs. And as a result, they often do get overlooked when it comes to patching. Well, and that's it for today. So thanks for listening. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for liking this podcast. And yeah, please leave a good review or at least click on the like or 5-star button in your favorite podcast platform. Anything like this is appreciated. Thanks, and talk to you again tomorrow. Bye.